I picked poetry for my curriculum material for this assignment. Alright, so for this slide, it's poetry in detail. So I looked up the definition, and Britannica defines poetry as a type of literature or artistic writing that attempts to stir a reader's imagination or emotions. I really like this definition. This is kind of how I explain it to my kids, and they really respond to it. The poet does this by carefully choosing and arranging language for its meaning, sound, and rhythm. Some poems, such as nursery rhymes, are simple and humorous. I added that last part. I like that part in the definition because that really applies to kindergarten and my level. Um, Poetry in elementary. So I know poetry can expand from, you can start in kindergarten and then go all the way to adolescence and even adults. I remember in my undergrad, I learned about poetry. So it's very wide range of ages. It doesn't have to just be middle school or elementary. It can be all ages. It taps into everyone's emotions and everyone's feelings and teaches everyone something. So that's really, I really like this resource. Some familiar examples. Again, I kind of put this towards elementary level. Some nursery rhymes, Dr. Seuss, Shel Silverstein. I still remember studying them and reading about them, and that's really how I learned about poetry. So I included them. And then I just have poetry teaches us so much. So I have on here rhyme, and then RIME, rhyme, metaphor, simile, author's purpose, syllables. I could have added so much more. Um, I'm I'll start with rhyme. Not all poems rhyme, but the ones I work with in kindergarten, that's really what I focus on is the rhyme in poetry. So my kids say poetry and poems rhyme. When you get up to the higher levels, then you can have things like haiku and things that do not rhyme and teach other things. Emotions. So poets deal with emotions. That's how they write. They tap into the reader's feelings. They call for deeper thinking. Um, Syllables. That's a big one that I didn't really think about teaching, but our textbook says poetry is an easy and fun way to help children hear syllables and words, and it enables them to segment sounds. So, like Mary had a little lamb. How many syllables in little? So that would be two. So that's just an easy and fun way to incorporate teaching syllables while teaching poetry. And then using rhyme, RHYME, to teach RIME, rhyme, which is also in our book. And it said looking at rhyming words and segmenting the sounds. So sat. At would be the rhyme, while s is the onset. So when we work with word families, all the at family words, that's a rhyme, RIME. Right. So that's kind of poetry in detail, just a quick snapshot of what I would describe poetry as. On the next slide is why is it effective for students? And this says appeals to children's interests. So children love and really respond to rhythm and rhyme, especially at the younger ages, which is why they love songs. So poetry is basically, I tell my kids, poetry sounds like a song. So it makes it fun to read and it grows confidence and fluency because children are interested in it. It's fun and engaging. So poems are short and they can keep their interest. So I know at my level, at 5 years old, if we're reading a chapter book, they're gone. Their interest is gone. So they're short, so it allows them to really dive deep into the text in a short amount of time, which is important. And then their emotional and social development. I did some research, and I didn't really think about this either. They allow children to develop a sense of humor or wit, so like the Shel Silversteins or the riddles, and then they can even become a source of comfort. So those ones that dive into the deeper feelings and emotions. This side is my favorite to make just because I got to sit down and really think, wow, I do a lot with poetry in my classroom. I use this resource a lot and it helps my kids. So I just started off in the beginning of the year. Right away, first week, we're into nursery rhymes. And I do this to introduce rhyme mostly, but also to model reading and text structure. We do one nursery rhyme every 2 days for the first 3 weeks or so. We read them together at the carpet. Then we use sentence strips and a pocket chart. So I'll have them every line by line written in a pocket chart. And then the more we do it, they can come up and fill in the words on little cards and get used to seeing print in different ways. So they then have a packet of nursery rhymes. And we use that. That's their first thing that goes into their poetry folder is these nursery rhymes. We do a lot of YouTube songs on the nursery rhymes so they can hear how poems sound like songs because of the rhymes. And it's just a really good introduction to rhyming, which is a huge skill we work on in kindergarten. Then we move on to shared poem. So this, I'll pull up. We have a program called LLI. So we use this in reading groups. Before we read or do our word work, I model reading each line of this. So apples I can see, apples on a tree. How many apples? 1, 2, 3. So just simple poetry like that. And I ask if they can think of any words. So what other words can you rhyme with see? Or just simple questions like that. And just emphasis on rhyming words. So see, 3, tree. Just simple, quick poetry review. My favorite way to use poems is our poetry notebooks right here. So we work with the same poem all week, and the poem usually goes with the theme of the week. So I do my weeks by theme. So this example I have is snowman or winter. And so I would print these out, and then they have each have their own notebook. So one of those composite notebooks I give them at the beginning of the year. They put their name on it, decorate it, and then we glue the poem to one page, and then the next page is a blank. So the first day, we circle words we know and all the rhyming words. This is rough in the beginning of the year because they don't know the words, they're not familiar with rhyme. By the end of the year, they're really good at it. So the first day, like I said, we go over all the rhyming words and the words we know, and they circle them. Then I model reading it, and I go line by line, and then they repeat it. So then the next day, with the same poem, they illustrate a picture on the blank page next to it. So sometimes I have pictures already, like down here, and sometimes I give them nothing, and we read it, and I say, okay, illustrate what you think about when you read this poem. So it really gets them thinking, that higher level thinking. Third day is another day of reading and repeating for fluency. In the last 2 days, they then get with a partner and practice it together. So last day, the partners come up and share their poem with the class. It's awesome to see at the end of the year that they're reading and memorizing pretty lengthy poems. This helps with so many skills: rhyming, fluency, high frequency words, confidence, and so much more. And then an easy way I incorporate poetry is just simply by reading books with rhyme. So Dr. Seuss, there's one that the kids really like called Frog on the Log, Bears in Underwear, just silly things like that. So it really gets them interested in it. And they're always, when I'm reading, they always shout out, hey, that rhymes! So now we have these rhyme sticks. So I said, okay, if you hear a rhyme, hold your stick up. So that way we can get through the story without so many interruptions, but they're still thinking about those rhymes. And then I use them throughout all subjects. So not just reading, not just science, everything. So this one's for math. So we have Sandy Square. And then I just find that when kids have songs or rhymes, they memorize it so much better. So it's not just limited to reading and writing. All right, so I use it in many different ways. This last slide here. These are just some websites and activities I have found. They're mostly in books. Like here I said Scholastic Book Club, so obviously you can get really good books with rhyme and other resources for pretty cheap. And then Teachers Pay Teachers. They have access to hundreds of poems and lessons to go along with them. So that's a really good resource that I have used a lot. And this one I actually found in our textbook. It's called Giggle Poetry. And I really like this site. There are featured poems and games along with a lot of other cool interactive activities. So that is my PowerPoint on curriculum material of poetry.